Hi everyone, welcome to week 13 of the Oregon Conference Free Methodist Experience. It is the last week of lectures for this class, and so we're up to the contemporary trends in Free Methodism. We're up to the current day and age in the Free Methodist story. We left off last week with the Free Methodist Church being formed, and so I'm just going to run you through the 20th century with some key dates that happened in Free Methodism during the 20th century. So right at the start of the 20th century, Free Methodism had been growing leaps and bounds. They had been planting like everything, but they were planning and planning and planning. And they realized that internally they weren't doing so strong. They didn't have good enough developed leaders to keep healthy churches in there. So they were growing and growing and planting, but the churches that they were leaving behind and planting were very much left behind and not developing, not growing, not creating a new generation of leaders. So they turn and face inwards. And all that early growth due to missions and church planting is just stunted, as the denomination, in part, probably goes too hard internally. They stop planting completely, and they become this kind of introverted denomination. Then in the 1930s, Free Methodism undergoes a major reorganization, it becomes administratively more centralized, and it starts to push itself out again. And especially in the 1940s, there begins to be more of an evangelism push, especially under the Light and Life Hour ministries. And this idea of having a discipleship time, it's actually driven by a radio ministry run by a Free Methodist minister. Then there's also in the 1940s some debates that have been running around for a long time around instrumental music. Up till this point, Free Methodists had always done their worship completely a cappella. It was part of their simplicity, their living in simplicity. Why would we pay for instruments when we could be giving the money to the poor instead? And in the 1940s, though, the regulations on instruments in worship get lifted. No longer are they singing hymns a cappella. They are now allowed a piano or an organ. At this point, they're still not allowed choirs. Various things will come into being over the years, but it's the 1940s that start to see instrumental music coming back into Free Methodist Church. They also, in early Free Methodists, had some really tight regulations around wearing gold, including wedding bands. Why would you wear such adornment when the money could be used to help the poor? And they relaxed regulations around wedding rings as well. I'll get a little bit more to that in means. And really what's happening is they're moving from a rules-based mentality to a principles-based mentality. So rather than having these are the rules of how you dress, these are the rules of how worship goes on that, they say the principle is simplicity. How will you live out simplicity? In 1958, Free Methodist Church up to this point had only existed in the USA, and they make the decision in 1958 to start doing global missions, some small global mission starts. 1974, women are accepted into ordination. This has always been a bit of a rub in the Free Methodist Church. B.T. Roberts, the founder of Free Methodism, was very pro-women in ministry. Our sister denominations, Nazarenes and Wesleyans, not the Wesleyans, sorry, the Nazarenes, had been ordaining women from the start. Wider Methodist bodies, such as the British Methodist Church, had been having women lay preach since the 1820s. So certainly there were lots of women lay preachers around, and they just hadn't been granted ordination. In 1974, Free Methodist Church decides to embrace women in ministry in full. 1985, this was a general conference at which the bishops declared the new day. It was a vision of the future that the vision shared. It was supposed to usher in a new era in the Free Methodist Church, and that their goal was by the end of the century, by the year 2000, there would be 1,000 new churches in America, with 125,000 people in North America as members of the Free Methodist Church and 300,000 members of the church globally. Free Methodist Church would be in 40 countries and there would be 6 new general conferences. Well, some of those goals have been achieved by now, some of them haven't. If you do 1,000 new churches within the United States, I don't think we've met that number. As for the membership figures, well, we now number 1.3 million worldwide. Most of our growth has been in our international stuff. Not sure whether quite got 6 new general conferences, but we've certainly created several new general conferences. Rwanda, India, Brazil, Haiti, just to name a few. And so that vision has been recognized in part, but not quite in full. And then in the late 1990s, early 2000s, there's a big organizational restructuring to meet 21st century needs. This was especially pioneered by Bishop Kevin Manoia. The consequence of him doing this was he wouldn't get re-elected as bishop. Many agree it needed to be done, but it wasn't necessarily popular how it came out. But it's that organizational restructuring that gives you the structure you experience today in the Free Methodist Church in terms of nuances and details and boards and rules and that kind of thing. So that's the very brief overview of the 20th century. Obviously, a lot more happened in those 100 years, but it really brings us into the modern era. This journey from becoming introverted and internalized, and a movement towards global mission, back towards being a missions-focused group, caring about bringing new people into the kingdom. Bit of modernization, move away from rules-based to principles-based. So from you can't have instruments and wedding rings to we just want you to embrace the principle of simplicity. To from men only in ordination to having women in ordination. This has been the journey through the 20th century. This brings us now to the 21st century. So where do we sit squarely today in 2017? So our mission, very simply put, is the Great Commandment and the Great Commission. Love God, love people, make disciples. And our vision is to bring wholeness, notice the holiness, Christian perfection wording there, to bring wholeness to the world through healthy biblical communities of holy people, multiplying disciples, leaders, groups, and churches. Pay special attention to that last push, multiplying disciples, leaders, groups, and churches. And you'll see how that comes through in a few minutes when we look at the multiplication plan. And in doing this mission and vision, we said, how are we going to do it? What's going to be distinctive about the way the Free Methodist Church goes around? Came up with the FMC's 9 strategic priorities. Okay? This was the bishops sat, had lots of discussions with elders in different bits, different conferences, different parts of the countries, different superintendents, missionaries all over the place. And they said, here's how we're going to go about love God, love people, make disciples. Here's how we as Free Methodists are going to bring our unique identity to this mission. First of all, is we're going to embrace everyone. We're going to cross racial lines. We're going to cross cultural lines. We're going to cross gender lines. Everybody is a part of the gospel. And you'll be looking at these, reading these in a bit more detail during your reading this week. Second, we're going to disciple deeply. We are a holiness movement. We care about discipleship. Discipleship produces mature Christians who can show Christ better. So we're going to disciple deeply. We're going to cultivate health. We know that if a church is unhealthy and it grows, then what we're left is a giant unhealthy mess that will eventually implode on itself. So we want our growth to be healthy all the way. We're going to develop leaders. For a church to grow, for new churches to open, we need to develop new leaders. We need to develop leaders who are great at pioneering new churches. We also need to develop leaders that are great at keeping our established churches strong. So rather than swinging all the way to back to church planting and risking swinging all the way back to the introversion that happened at the start of the 20th century, we're saying, look, we need to create those leaders for the mission field, and we need to create those leaders to keep the bastions that we already have. We're going to multiply ministries. This is especially the church planting push, but this also comes through even in just if there's a small group ministry in the church. The expectation isn't that it's this isolated small group ministry, that it will grow, it will thrive, and it will multiply. It will reproduce itself. Leaders will reproduce themselves. Groups will reproduce themselves. Think back to that vision we looked at a minute ago. Healthy leaders, groups, churches, all multiplying. Going global. You've already seen this push, this trajectory in the 20th century. 1.3 million Free Methodists worldwide. The vast majority of those are not in the United States of America. We're going to honor fruitfulness. We're going to look and see where is spiritual fruit happening. And that's where we're going to invest. Where does it seem the Spirit is moving? That's where we'll put our resources. We're going to engage urban. This is just the reality of the modern world we live in. People are gradually moving more and more and more and more to the cities. And if that's where the people are, that's where we're going to take the gospel message. We're also going to partner strong. We realize that there's limits to what we can achieve as a denomination, as individual churches, as individual people. So what we're going to do, partner with other organizations, other groups to build and create a kingdom work that is way stronger. So we partner with others through the Wesleyan Holiness Connection. We partner with others on local church levels. So my church in Falls City, we partner with the Salvation Army, Department of Human Services, Goodwill Job Connection, and a whole host of other services to boost our ministries during our Friday produce giveaway. So there's all sorts of levels, from denomination right down to the local church, where this can happen. So this is how Free Methodists said, this is how we are going to carry out love God, love people, make disciples, using our Free Methodist identity, using our Free Methodist theology and who we are. This is how we as Free Methodists are going to approach this challenge. Now, to boost these 9 strategies, the bishop also worked with churches and leaders and that to bring about a plan of how to multiply, how to go about doing this multiplication movement, this envisioned multiplication of churches, of leaders, of groups, of everything. And they've really just started pushing this. Those of you that were at E3 earlier this year would have recognized this right off the bat. And there's 3 big parts to the Free Methodist Church's multiplication one. One, revitalize churches. If churches are spiritually dead, they will not reproduce. So find ways of opening people's hearts to God again in a church, of bringing in new life, of opening the doors, of bringing in the breeze, blowing away the dust, and revitalizing the hearts of believers, so that they are empowered, so that they're listening to God, so that they are moving for mission, that their hearts are being stirred up for mission and reproduction. Recalibrate. Sometimes churches have a certain trajectory they're on, and that trajectory can only go downhill, and they need a recalibration. They need to reorient themselves. Need to make that course correction. This is especially Bishop Roller's working on this a lot. Some churches have not readjusted for modern culture yet. Postmodern culture, I should say. They haven't readjusted for a technological age yet. They haven't readjusted for the sociological context of America in 2017. And they need to recalibrate and readjust to be relevant for today. Then the third one is replicate. Is take time, invest in replicating your leaders. Be intentional about replicating small groups. Be intentional about having plans to plant new churches. Find ways that small rural communities can help other churches plant and support one another. So this is our multiplication plan. Revitalize, recalibrate, and replicate what is working, what is good in a place. And you're going to read that in much more detail today. That really is surface skim through it, but you're going to read during this week a lot more about that. But if this is our plan moving forward, we know there's certain social issues that the world throws at us. Hot potatoes, if you want. Um, Three big hot potatoes we've decided to stare right down off the bat. We're not shirking away from. Okay? Big one right now with executive orders and all sorts coming out of the presidential office. Race and immigration. The Free Methodist Church, in engaging the immigration debate, has said we welcome the stranger. We do what Deuteronomy says when it says welcome the widow, the orphan, and the stranger. When it says welcome the foreign resident, the alien in your land, into Sabbath. When it says welcome the stranger into your home, we will do that. When Jesus wanted us to treat the least of these, we will do that. We will welcome and we will support immigrants. They are people too. We will not treat them in a way that sees them as less human than we are. We will not treat them with fear. We will treat them with love and kindness and compassion and grace and mercy. For they are people too. They are created in the image of God too. They need redemption in Jesus too. And they should be welcomed into our communities with love, just like any other human being. Another big one is human sexuality. On this, we have put our feet quite firm. Marriage is between a man and a woman. That is our standing point. And I will tell you now, the bishops will not move us from that. Marriage is between a man and a woman. Women in ministry. You would have thought that we were maybe past having this one, but gender equality is a big part of the Free Methodist movement, and so ordination of women is in line with the Bible's teaching. That is how we understand it. Women can be ordained. It is in line with God's will. It is in line with Scripture. Women are allowed to be ordained, and we will ordain. We won't ordain them just because they're a woman. We are still looking for gifts and graces for word, sacrament, and order, just as with any man. But the fact that a candidate is a woman will not mean they are treated any differently. As best as we can manage in our ordination system, we will support. We will be obnoxious in our support of women in ministry. These debate, and we're still working on these, are very much debated. You can go onto the Study Commission on Doctrine website, SCOD board as we call them, and you will be doing this week as part of your reading to engage in some of these issues a little more and dive in deeper on them. But as we go through engaging this culture, engaging mission, engaging replication, multiplication, we have strategies, we're engaging hot topics in the culture. We also have a lot of arms reaching out into the world. I'm just going to share some of them with you. This isn't all of them. First of all, I'm going to show you ministries that are implicitly tied to the denomination. So they are run out of Free Methodist headquarters in Indianapolis. So the first is Free Methodist World Missions. They focus upon our world missions side. International Childcare Ministries. These are attached to Free Methodist World Missions. They help food, clothe kids, give them an education, and they provide animals to villages, all sorts of things. But it's a way that we engage and work with children and grow them up in Christ around the world. Second one, Visa. This is again tied into Free Methodist World Missions, but Visa is our short-term, Volunteers in Service Abroad. This is our short-term missions group. Then we have Seed, run by Rose and David Brewer, and they are from Kelly's Church, Grace in Portland, and I can never remember what it stands for. It's something like Sustainable Something in Economic Development. But it's micro-enterprise, finding a way of, rather than just giving food and money to a group of people in another country, they find a way that they can create an industry for them and actually create a living so that they have a steady, sustainable income. Women's Ministry International, Men's Ministry International. You know, pretty self-explanatory. Ministry focusing on women around the world, ministry focusing on men around the world. And then Free Methodist Bible quizzing. You know, this was one that really had me scratching my head when I first came to the United States. The Free Methodist Still Bible Quiz. I actually had to ask what Bible quizzing was because this was something from before my time and generation. But if you want your high schoolers to compete against other teams about their knowledge of the Bible around the country, Free Methodists have a space for that. So these are just some of the parts of our denomination that are at work pushing out these various strategies and goals of the Free Methodist Church. We then also have several organizations we partner with or affiliate with. These that I'm about to show you, I'm just going to show you the ones that get mentioned the most. The reality is there's a whole load of them, but I'll just go through the ones that get mentioned most. First one, Free Methodist Foundation. This is effectively the investment branch of the Free Methodists. They deal with mortgages for our churches. They look after the pastors' pension plans. They are a monetary foundation, an investment foundation for Free Methodists. Clear Blue Water Project, a project founded by a Free Methodist superintendent about providing clean water to people all around the world. Set Free Movement. This is a big movement helping put an end to sex slavery around the world. Of course, with slavery being such an important social justice issue to Free Methodists, it's one we support wholeheartedly. And then for the environmentalists among you, there's the Eden Rainforest Project, which is about in areas that have suffered large amounts of deforestation, going back in and replanting the forests. This is especially big in Haiti, especially big in Ethiopia. And one of the things that everyone's impressed by with the Eden Rainforest Project is they have it down to just a few cents a tree. And they've had big multinational charities coming in and asking, how do you get your trees so cheap per tree? And the secret is, well, we just teach the locals to plant them. So rather than paying white Westerners to come in and plant all the trees, we just teach the locals. And the locals love it because they're learning about systems, they're learning about how to keep their soil good, and the benefits go far beyond just the price of the tree. So this is just some of our branches operating around that you will hear mentioned from time to time in your churches. And if you have interest in any of these areas, you should be considering connecting with. It's a very brief, sweeping overview of the current location of the Free Methodist Church. You're going to read all those slides I went through in deeper detail this week. So, first of all, you're going to go to the FM website, specifically the Uniquely FM website, and you're going to look at the 9 strategies. When you pull up the page, they'll be all there. Click on each one, and there's a video to watch, just like 1 to 2 minutes per strategy. So go through and watch those videos. You're going to read the Free Methodist Multiplication Plan. It's about 5 pages long, and I've posted it on the class site. Then you're also going to visit the SCOD website. On the SCOD website, I want you to interact for around 45 minutes. Okay? For just over 45 minutes. The SCOD website is set up with you can read articles by various SCOD board members. Remember, that's Study Commission on Discipline. Doctrine. Sorry. Study Commission on Doctrine. There we go. And these days they have redesigned the SCOD website. So there's now a feed you can go into and contribute to discussion. And it's moderated by Dr. Danny Wayman. And the main discussions they are focusing on right now are race, immigration, sexuality, and women in ministry. Those are the main focuses of the SCOD board website. And so you can go on and you can be part of the conversation. You don't just have to read articles, you can be a part of the conversation. And then you'll be glad to hear that this week there is no discussion forum. Instead, get started on your final project papers. Look over the instructions for those. Be planning out what you might want to have in your paper. Be thinking about where am I greatest in line with the Free Methodist Church? Where am I most in tension? So be having a think about that. And I will see you at the face-to-face on Saturday. Have a great week. Bye.